Welcome back to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Marco Luciano and why I think he is the biggest X factor for the Giants in the 2024 season. Now, obviously, in baseball, there's 26 guys on the active roster, plus a bunch of guys that are going to end up playing over the course of the season. So one guy is never going to be able to carry a team like they do in, say basketball, for instance. But I think Marco Luciano is going to have the biggest potential impact on how many games this team ends up winning in 2024 and whether or not they, underperform or overperform expectations. So, starting off, we're going to talk about where Vegas has the Giants right now, which they currently have the over under for wins at 81 and a half. So, they pretty much think it's going to be about a 500 team again, like they've been the last couple of years, which is fair. I mean, if I looked at the Giants personally, I have them right around 80 wins, which I mean, or 79, 80 wins, somewhere in there, 78 maybe. So this isn't that far off. And, I could see how they could look at 81 and a half as kind of where they're predicting because this is largely the same roster that has averaged 80 wins over the last 2 years. They won 81 in 2022 and 79 last year. And they probably are looking at it as they have a better manager now with Bob Melvin. And the roster as a whole is probably slightly stronger, if anything. Now, granted, some of that are guys that are going to be not back until the second half, like Robbie Ray. So that's where they have them. So that's going to be kind of what we're basing this off of is the 81 kind of win total that they're predicting. So the reason why I look at Marco Luciano and I view him as a guy that is going to have the biggest impact has to do with the fact that I think he could be an incredibly volatile performer this season where we could see him really struggle. Last year he struck out over 30% of the time throughout the year between AA, AAA, and the majors. But he also has as much talent with the bat as any player in this organization. So, should he realize said potential, he has the most potential to kind of change the entire outlook of the team. Because should he reach that potential, you suddenly have a very legitimate middle of the lineup bat with huge power potential and huge upside. And so because of that, he kind of can, you know, cover all ends of the spectrum. If he performs poorly, they may only win 76, 77 games. And if all of a sudden he realizes his potential, which I'm not predicting he will in 2024, you may have a guy that carries the team to 85, 86, 87 wins as it's currently constructed. I think that's unlikely, but he has that kind of upside there. Him and Harrison are the two guys that right now could change the outlook of kind of the organization in the very near future should they realize their potential. So some things with Marco Luciano that I've noticed throughout his career, and we'll see kind of where that leads us to for this season and what we think he may be able to do. So one thing I've noticed with him is he does tend to take some time at every level to figure it out, which isn't shocking, especially because with him being a international signee that they brought in and had him play stateside pretty early. They let him play in back when they had the Salem Kaiser kind of short season A ball. At 17 years old, they let him play 9 games of that after playing in rookie ball. Now, he lost 2020 due to the COVID season. Otherwise, we might have seen him even sooner. And he's also dealt with a lot of injuries, which has slowed his progress down a little bit. But after doing very well in San Jose in 2021, he did earn a promotion up to High A, Eugene, where he did struggle a ton in those 36 games that he played up in High A. Hit 217, only had one home run, weighted runs created plus was 59, meaning he was 41% below league average. He was only 145 plate appearances, but his walks were down, his strikeouts were up. Clearly he was a little bit, there was an adjustment period there. He came back in 2022 and did pretty well at high had 22%, cut the strikeouts down to 22%, walks were back up to 9.5%, hit 263, had a 121 weighted runs created plus. So he was 21% better than league average. He did deal with some injuries. He actually was performing much better than that and then got hurt, came back from injuries, and the numbers kind of tapered off. And this is kind of a pattern we're going to see with Marco Luciano. Comes back, gets hurt in winter ball, had a stress fracture, I believe, in his lower back. Finally misses all of spring training, misses the first month plus of the season, goes to double A, and he's absolutely putrid out the gate in double A. He is striking out left and right. He's really struggling. Eventually, though, he does figure it out. He played 56 games there, 242 plate appearances. The average didn't look great. He hit 228, but that was really carried because of the really bad start he had, and he did only play 56 games there. Eventually figures it out, hit 11 home runs. The strikeout percentage ended up at 29.8%. Again, it was carried by the really bad early goings where he was well over 40% strikeouts. Walks, he ended up walking 14.9% of the time. So he did have almost a 340 on base percentage, which was respectable given his average. Weighted runs created plus of 115. So eventually he does typically figure out the levels. AAA in major leagues last year, he only gets 123 combined plate appearances. So not a ton to go off of. When he first got called up to AAA, actually performed pretty well, was hot. They called him up. They gave him that 4-game call up. And he went, I believe, 3 for 8 or 3 for 11. I think it was 3 for 11. Struck out like 4 times or 5 times. So strikeouts were still an issue. But he didn't show that he was overwhelmed. They sent him back down because they wanted him to learn second base, so that way he could be a little more versatile and they could find more playing time for him. And he pulled his hamstring and he ended up missing 3 or 4 weeks. When he came back came back to AAA after getting healthy, he struggled again and started striking out a ton again. So it's something you kind of see with Marco that if he misses extended time, he is very slow to getting his rhythm back and getting his timing back in the batter's box, especially. Came back up for another, kind of short call up. They let him play about 10 games up in the majors at the very end of the season. Kind of a mixed bag of results. Hit some balls extremely hard, had some impressive hits. Namely, he took a Clayton Kershaw curveball that he one-hopped the right center field wall in Dodger Stadium, which was a beautiful swing that he put on that one. So, I don't think he's necessarily going to be overwhelmed. I think his talent is going to allow him to at least hang tough. But there are some things that I think he needs to adjust, especially up at the major league level. So, one thing that he actually gets a ton of credit for that I do think he would probably benefit from changing his approach a little bit is the fact that he does have such great plate discipline. That's why his walk percentages are so high, but it's caused his strikeouts to kind of spike pretty high in the last year or so. And that's because he's not swinging a ton. He's trying to work deep in counts. And, this seems to be an organizational philosophy. And I genuinely don't like this philosophy because, yes, you don't want to be swinging at junk. There is a balance to be struck here. You don't want to be swinging at junk. You don't want to be chasing a bunch of pitches. You don't want to be, for lack of a better term, you don't want to be Pablo Sandoval up there swinging at everything. But you also don't want to just be watching pitches go by that are, piped fastballs, which we saw a bunch from him where he wasn't being aggressive early in counts, or even sometimes late in counts where he's taking pitches almost down the middle because he's trying to work deep into the count. And, his overall swing percentage last year was only 39.7%. Now, it was only 45 plate appearances. It's a small sample size. But he's also only swinging at 60% of the pitches that are in the zone. So what I would think and what I would like to see is a guy with his kind of power potential and his kind of, potential to do damage. He should be up there looking to just crush something and be looking to do some damage, not draw walks. if we're looking for Marco Luciano to be up there looking to draw walks and work deep in counts, then we are wasting his talent because he should be up there trying to put one off the Coke bottle, quite frankly, or knock guys in, or not sit there and draw walks. I want hits. I want to see a high average with a guy or decent average with power from a guy like him. So that's something that I'd like to see to get adjusted. I do think Burrell is a guy that is going to have more of that philosophy. If you listen to Pat Burrell talk, his philosophy on hitting is you should still be, he cares about batting average. He thinks batting average matters. A lot of people kind of disagree with that when they look at the advanced metrics. But Pat Burrell has said that, back when he played, the goal was to hit 300 and the rest of the numbers typically would take care of himself. And I think that's kind of a way that a guy like Marco Luciano should be looking at it. So that's my opinion on him and what he needs to do. And, one of the things I noticed with his strikeouts last year, he struck out 17 times in his 45 plate appearances in majors. 8 of those 17 were called third strikes, as well as several that were just down the middle. So he's either getting fooled by pitches or it's just an approach issue. And I kind of tend to believe it's more of the approach, given that's kind of his MO is to see a ton of pitches. So I hope that's something that they end up adjusting. But at the end of the day, it is my belief that if he can somehow reach his potential, this team could actually be much closer to being competitive than really any other player on the team doing what they might reach on their high end. Because unfortunately, as it currently stands, the Giants are slated to start probably 4 or 5 veteran players that we really know what they are. You kind of know what Michael Conforto, what Mike Yastrzemski is. You know what JD Davis is. I don't see kind of what Lamont Wade Jr. and Flores are going to give you, give or take a little bit. But, these are guys that are not going to more than likely all of a sudden come out and just way overperform what you expect them to perform, unless your expectations are just super low because you don't like the player. But realistically, looking at those guys, you know what you're going to get. And that's where these projections are coming from. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. As always, if you like the channel and you like this material, like, subscribe. I appreciate it. We're having a ton of growth. I think on the next episode, I'm looking to maybe do another mailbag, unless something happens in the next few days. Maybe do another mailbag. So please leave comments with any topics you want me to talk about in a future video. It might not be the very next one. It might be in a couple. Like I said, it just depends on what happens with the Giants. But appreciate the support. It's been awesome. And we'll catch you guys next time.